I'll go tally the votes. I need you to bring me your torch. This is where we learn who is the ultimate survivor. I'll read the votes.
Hello, everyone. Today, Ollie and I have got something for you. Unfortunately, Phil could not be here, but that's all right. We're going to talk about all of episode 11, the good, the bad, and all of the drama, which was nice. I think this was a good storytelling episode, Ollie. It really got me thinking about, I had the privilege of talking to Jack about this episode right after it aired on Wednesday. And we really kind of talked about like the difference between big strategic game moves on Survivor, those type of episodes versus more of the narrative storytelling driven episodes of Survivor. Do you have a preference for one or the other?
No, I feel like both are great, and I like it when you have one and then the other. I like having that contrast because I feel like if we have a season full of just big strategic plays over and over again, then I feel like I lose sense of everyone else. Kind of the same flip of if it's just all character development, sometimes it's like we just need something a bit spicier. So I like that it kind of differs. We've had those big strategic episodes, and this episode, I do agree. I think we had some good storytelling and development on people, personally and in a game context, I think.
Yeah, I feel like this episode is actually perfect for that type of mindset when it comes to the show. Like this episode really rivaled, I know Jack and I talked about like Shakespearean tragedies in a sense, or like soap operas, you know, just it really had that feel with how they decided to tell the story. And we focused a lot on that like Reba core 4 alliance. It was almost like a family was splitting up during this episode, or it became a little bit dysfunctional. And it was very interesting to watch it all unfold.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we really saw this episode because we've kind of talked about the cracks and we've kind of talked about certain players' weaknesses. And I feel like we really saw this episode. We saw those really showcasing and kind of everyone. We really saw who was there for the alliance and who was actually there for themselves. And I feel like that's how I want to lead that with first. We'll get into it more.
We definitely will, because that's the whole point of this episode, which was great. A lot of a nice coincidences for production to get to play off of and really use to build with the scenery, and we'll talk about that too. I mean, it was really interesting to see everyone sort of react to Bruce exiting the game, right? So we like start back on their camp. They are all celebrating.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting time. You could tell that Bruce's presence, like he was a very big player in the game. And I think everyone is sort of feeling like, okay, things have sort of opened up.
Yeah, I mean, all I was waiting for was ding dong, the Wicked Witch is dead. Like, that's what I was like.
Very Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, like everyone was so excited. And I just felt there was a part of me that felt really bad for Bruce, like personally, because I was like, no one ever wants to feel that way where you leaving has that much of like a happy effect. I'm not going to say positive. I will say happy in that instance. But I can kind of understand it because I feel like we saw this season, there was sort of a lack of awareness from Bruce's POV. And I think it's that sense that everyone's happy to see. It's that freedom of, okay, we're not going to have to deal with someone who's trying to control all of our games as well, whilst giving a very different approach to what we're all doing.
Well, he also just kept winning. He kept winning immunity after immunity. I think someone who actually really benefits from Bruce's removal from the game is Jake, because Jake was always seen as the alternate vote. It's interesting. It's funny to like see this perspective on the game. I don't think I've ever really thought about this before, but like to be that person who is associated with the main target and constantly being the one at risk because the main target is still in the game. But we see people sort of take a back seat from targeting Jake this episode now that Bruce is gone.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a mixture of that. Now that like it's a mixture of that, but then also I do feel like the Reba cracks sort of helped that. Because it was really a lot of what one person from Reba wanted versus what another person from Reba wanted. And as soon as it clashed and it caused heads, I feel like all Jake needed to do was just sit back and shut up and he was good. So I feel like that's where he really benefited. Being that quiet this round actually helped him.
Someone who was not so quiet this round and it ended up really getting in their way was Emily, who admitted
Yeah.
that the reason everyone was questioning, why didn't Bruce play his role? Why did Bruce vote for Julie? And Emily gave them the answer, but unfortunately, it didn't go over as Emily had probably
Yeah.
hoped that it did.
My notes literally say, Emily, why are you mentioning it? Because at the end of the day, all you like, as we said last episode, we were all there praising Emily because basically last episode was Emily's episode. The reason all of those amazing gameplays happened was because of Emily. So the fact that she's going to everyone now and mentioning them and being like, oh, here's why Bruce didn't play as Idol, even though she did it to give context to people, I was still sat there and I was like, Emily, no, because now we see Julie is there going, well, Emily's playing great. Why not get rid of her? And I'm like, no, that's what we didn't want.
It looked like she instantly regretted it.
Yes.
Like it looked like she very much didn't realize how that move was going to be perceived by others.
Yes.
And I mean, once it was out, it was out. I was so hoping that Emily would just say, Bruce did tell me he was voting for Julie, or something along those lines, or just leave it as a mystery of some sort, right? Like exactly. It's one of those.
Leave it for final tribal council when you're giving your speech on why to win. That's a great time to bring it up.
It's a great time to bring it up. Plus, I feel like you would have Bruce there on the jury to validate in case anyone really did have a question about how that blindside really did happen.
Yeah.
So, this is sort of, unfortunately, this paints a really big target on Emily. I do feel like the episode does kind of show its cards, and we talked about it during the reaction with Emily going home, but we'll save that for the edit that happens during the journey part of the episode. Yes. And we get the highlight of the Reba 4 alliance, but not just that. We also get a little pared down insight into the Reba 4 alliance, specifically when it comes to the relationship between Austin and Dee. And I thought this was a nice edit.
It's Survivor meets Love Island. I love it. No, I'm joking.
It was funny because I thought they took a different approach than they normally have when it comes to showmances on the show.
I mean, I feel like they kind of wanted. They definitely showed that there was something, like there were feelings, but you could kind of tell both of them were like, no, not yet. We're like, not in this context. We are playing a game. But it was when Austin referred to Robert Amber, and I was like, that's so cute. But he was talking to Dee about it, and I was like, convenient.
Wait, is this a hint, though, that they're going to make it to the end, just like Rob and Amber?
Maybe.
Because that's my only thing. We've seen a lot of showmances seasons past. We just had one last season with Franny and Matt. So, like, what, what are they, by even putting the footage of Rob and Amber in there as well, like, what are they trying to say?
What are they trying to allude? Yeah, what are they trying to allude?
Nothing.
Yeah.
We've gone, Ollie, we've had our thoughts, theories on a bunch of different things that ended up being so completely wrong from what happened. Yeah, way over there. And I am going to happily continue being wrong about my speculations, but that's part of the fun about what we're doing, why we're doing the show.
Well, this is the thing. I feel like with Dee and Austin, I mean, everyone's kind of like, I do see Twitter and like Instagram and everyone, people do ship them too. And it's kind of, when I watch them to mention it, like, they don't
clarifying. You say ship with a P, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ship.
Okay. Thank you.
Ship. They ship each other. Sorry, that's the British accent. But like we see everyone's like, oh, these two, they're so loving, and it's like we've already seen like the little tidbits of it, and now we're kind of seeing the full, like, what's going on between them. But as I've said, for right now, I feel like they are keeping it at game level. They're not pushing anything majorly. But I feel like if this is going to benefit anyone, and we've seen it this episode, it's going to benefit Dee more than Austin.
Oh, interesting.
Because as we saw this episode, when it comes to how close their bond is, Dee's able to compartmentalize. Austin wasn't. And I feel like that's why I'm saying I feel like whatever this is, it's benefiting Dee more. Because I feel like Dee has the savviness to utilize it, but also keep it where it is. She's not going to be like, she's very much, this is a game right now. Whatever happens afterwards, happens afterwards. But right now, this is a game.
I mean, it does make me think about, like, if the roles were reverse later in the episode, and we can hypothesize about this when we get to it, but if Dee had been the one to have information that she didn't know if she should share with Austin or not, would she have? You know, like, it's a very interesting thing. Austin chooses to share the information with Dee, but would that be the same way if the roles were reversed? I don't know. And we'll see in future episodes of that. And the reason I wanted to clarify ship is because I could see there's some people out there who don't like showmances on reality television, and it becomes easy to sort of like hate on the showmances online or also just like to ourselves. But I think I appreciated how this one, it was very well established and set up, and I really liked it. And it felt very natural to the story that's going along in this episode. Okay. When you saw the rock draw clue in the intro, did you think that...
I have no idea.
You had no idea? Okay.
I was like, it's either going to be rocks at Tribal, but like, obviously I was sat there going, it's 7, it can't be that. I was like, they're drawing rocks at Immunity, and it has a really big impact. Like, it had something to do with a rock draw, but I was trying to figure out where. So obviously when it came up just on the beach, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be part of the immunity challenge, or if there was going to be a reward challenge. That's where I thought it was going to happen. It didn't. But it was also, you know, like I like the intro clue. I just wanted to highlight that. I think that that's something they should continue, and they should keep the intro because it's amazing. So, I mean, we go back to everyone. We see this conversation between Katurah and Julie and Jake, and this was
heavy.
I'm speechless.
Yes.
I'm speechless as to Katurah's story.
Yes. First of all, I give props to Survivor and the producers and the editors for how they went about this, because it's such it's a heavy story. So how they handled it, I think they did a wonderful job on. Again, the fact that those kind of things still happen right now, like, it's crazy to me, but it kind of confirmed to me why she was one of my favorites. Like, her resilience, like, hats off to her. On the flip side, I did also find it funny that all three of them, Jake, Katurah, and Julia, were all sat there, and it was Jake talking about being a lawyer, and you've got the two other lawyers who are pretending not to be lawyers sat there going, yeah, I was like, that's funny.
That is a good flag. That's funny. I didn't think about that. I knew Katurah, in her confessional, she's open, like, part of her strategy is keep Jake talking about being a lawyer.
Yes.
And like I mentioned, you know, I think that's a great example of social strategy, where it's like using the knowledge. I'm like, it looks like Katurah is using the knowledge she has about being a lawyer to continue the conversation with Jake so that he talks about his experience being a lawyer. And I just think it's a really great and very subtle move. And I didn't even think about the fact that Julie was also an attorney, and that's funny.
Do you know what I also found? This is just my hypotheticals, my way left situation, is if them three all went to the final three, if it was them three that were the final three, Jake's obviously sat there being like, I'm a lawyer, I've always got this target. Katurah goes, fun fact, I'm a lawyer, and no one ever knew. And then Julie comes out of nowhere and goes, hold on, that was my thing. I'm a lawyer too. Like, I'd love that situation.
The gradual reveal that everyone in the final three is a lawyer. I mean, okay, let's pause there for a second. Do you see a world where it could be that final three?
I'd like to hope. But I feel like right now I have to see what happens next episode to confirm
Mhm.
whether it could be. There's a way, but I'd need to see other things happen first to know.
Yeah, I'm eager to see. It looks like this is kind of setting the groundwork for a working relationship
Mm,
between Jake and Katura, especially since now they are the last remaining original Bello
yeah.
members on this merged tribe. So they are fighting an uphill battle with this Reba majority,
Mm,
but the Reba majority might be turning on each other. And I thought that they were going to do it this episode, which
yeah.
they did, but let's see if they're able to finish the job next time. Not with Julie.
Yes.
Hopefully, maybe someone else.
True.
You said it.
I'll say it. Yeah.
Takes a sip of tea. A boat arrives at the beach. There's a note and there's a pouch, right? And we basically find out they have to all agree to send one person
Mm,
on a journey. If more than one person volunteers, they're gonna draw rocks, and everyone just decides, let's just draw the rocks. Emily picks the green rock,
I
and
can I just say I felt bad for Emily because she actually I think she was the only one that said I'm not really that bothered about going. Everyone else kind of did want to go. Emily was like, I'm just saying yes because everyone else is, and then she drew the rock. She was like, for God's sake.
but now why did she go? That's the question, because people
Mm,
were asking her when she drew the rock, do you want to go? Like, you have the rock. Do you want to do this? And I feel like, and I know Emily had no idea what the assignment was or what the
mm,
thing was going to be. Obviously, by now, I think we can all expect when you go on a journey, there is going to be the option of
yeah,
the losing your
losing your
boat.
vote.
So I wonder if I really thought Emily was going to do the challenge. That's just my she ended up going. She separated herself from camp,
Mm,
and I really thought that she was just going to go ahead and try it out, but she chose not to. And we'll get to that a little bit
yeah,
later. I really want to talk about that edit that they gave her, because I saw it as a sign that she was like really at risk for going home. The most I felt that she was at risk for going home since the very first episode.
yeah.
So I don't know. We'll talk about it when we get there. But Emily does go, and what's left on the beach is a bunch of people talking about Emily's threat level. And I think it's interesting. Did you catch this? Julie said she was talking to Drew, and Julie said, I was happy to sit with Emily at the end until now. So we saw the
Yeah.
impact of Emily revealing how she went about things for the
Uh,
tribal council before.
yes. I mean, we say, yeah, that's the thing. But we also saw other people's opinions on who they don't want to sit next to in the end. Because I know at that point as well, because I've got it in my notes, so clearly it was a conversation. Drew mentioning that he doesn't want to go against Julie, or
Hmm.
he's wanting to go against Julie. But I think Julie's clocked it as well. Julie's kind of seen how Drew is. I need to remember that part, but yeah, that's what I've got in my notes.
Yeah, I mean, Julie does say that she thinks Drew is sort of acting suspicious
Yeah.
at this point, and we're setting the groundwork for some sort of betrayal, which ends up happening to
Mm,
Julie later. Obviously, she saves herself, but we also have Dee, who's like, "No, we got to stick together. Like, it's important that we keep the numbers. We have a Reba 4 for a reason, and let's just get to the 4
yeah.
of us left in the game before we start taking shots." And this is interesting, and we see like Emily is the target in Dee's mind. Emily is the target in Julie's mind, but there's that relationship between Drew and Emily that is sort of in the way of these plans.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's again, this is where I said it before, Drew having his hands in too many cookie jars. And it's now him having to take his hands out of some and revealing how he really feels. And I think it's very interesting to me that, his main group has been this Re before. Like, give credit where credit is due. The Re before have been running the game. They have been killing it. And now Drew wants to go, nope, it's going to be me, Austin, and Emily. And I find it very interesting that he's now done that, but I feel like he's done it too openly. I feel like this episode we really saw kind of Drew doing a bit too much in the sense of he made it very obvious he was getting kind of move hungry. He wanted to kind of make a big play. He wanted to switch up the game. And I feel like he done that a little bit too not I'm trying to think of the word. He just did it a bit too grand. He was very much too open about it, which I
Like
think
prematurely?
Yeah. I think definitely, because do it at 6, because right now you've got, if you want to ensure that you have a good spot, still get rid of one of these, because at the end of the day, you've got the Reba 4 and you've still got Katurah, Jake, and Emily. Get rid of one of them, because then by that point, it's a 4-2. And if you wanted to, you can make sure that you are the two in the middle being the swing vote. And if you do want to make that move and go for Emily and Julie and Dee, you then at least have that. So yeah, I think it was a bit premature, but that's just me.
Yeah, I agree. I do think this was wrong timing. I also wonder a situation where the move happened earlier. Like how, I guess here's my question for the group here is how long did you think the Reba alliance was going to last? Because I didn't think that they would remain intact all the
No.
way to this point, but they have, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. And I think that's something to be celebrated with, and I do believe at least one of them will make it to final 3, at least. I think that's something to be celebrated.
Yeah, they will.
It-
Sorry, I was just doing the thing in my head. I was like, yeah, there will be one of them in the
there will be, yeah.
There will be.
Which is incredible. And I think, I mean, how long did you think that they would last as a group? Because I really thought that, I think where I thought that they were going to split up was when I thought I was going to lose 2 players on my Survivor Now draft team, which was when Sifu went. And when, do you remember Julie was at risk of going home that night? If Jake's plan actually happened with Katurah voting against Julie, it would have tied, and they had all that thing. That's where I thought that the alliance was going to split up, but that's not what happened. And they've lasted all the way till now, and they are like so perfectly in the majority.
I didn't think it was going to last this long. So I didn't think it was going to last this long, but how it's cracked, I did think that's how it was going to go down. I always thought it was going to be Drew wanting to just become move hungry. I just thought it was going to happen a lot sooner because, again, before that, everyone was talking about Dee and how much of a threat Dee was, and kind of Julie's name was always there as a vote. So I did think I thought Drew and Austin were going to make the move, like when it was final 10, final 9, to really open up their games. But again, kudos to them for keeping it as tight as it has been. And I do think I give that credit to Julie, Dee, and Austin, because I feel like even more so Austin, because I feel like Austin is the person that's kept Drew on side and kind of remained with Dee, who's had Julie. But yeah, I always knew it was going to be Drew wanting to backstab, because you could tell that's what he wanted to do for ages. So
I mean, eventually it would have had to have happened. And
yeah.
I think arguably it could have been a good move for Drew at certain times. And again, we talked about the timing of this whole entire thing, but he has that relationship with Emily, and now Emily's on this journey, and we get this whole self-reflection of the Emily that we met on day 1 of Survivor 45 to where Emily is now on day 20. And it's an amazing, I liked seeing this, but at the same time I was like, Emily's going home.
Yeah. I was like, I loved it, because I literally put in my notes, it showed her growth as a person, which is amazing. And it's kind of, we've seen her go from this person that arguably we were all like, she's going to be the villain of the season, to then morph. Like, she had a metamorphosis and she's now become this person that everyone adores. But yeah, the editing side of me now, because of you, I looked at it and I was like, there's the highlight. there's I have a feeling now. I'm like, she's pretty much gonna. But yeah, like I just overall I loved it. But that journey, I know you were saying this earlier about why didn't she take the risk, but I do think it was smart of her not to go for it because, for my view, I did think it was too big of a risk. But I don't know. What did you think?
I thought the risk was that she was already there.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens, when you go back to camp, and we saw it happen, Dee was like, Emily's lying. Emily
Yeah.
has something. And I think the fact that Emily couldn't even go back and say, I lost my vote, I'm not voting tonight. I wonder if things would have changed for her at this point.
Yeah.
You know, like that's where I'm like, I feel like there was something missing from this. She was already there. And that's why I understand when you look at the numbers, it seems like it is a big risk to risk your vote at that time. Like, I'm not saying that that's a very easy thing to do. In fact, I was reflecting on, you know, if I were ever in this position, and I too was like, oh, I might walk away from this because it just, it's also like Emily knew that no one succeeded at this challenge at the beginning of the game. So it's kind of just like, all right, well, now I'm about to do it alone. I don't think I would be able to succeed at it. And I'm going to say I might not give it a try, but because you're already there, and I think this is a good thing to remember, everyone on your tribe, if you're ever to play the game, is going to have suspicions about what you were doing there, what you came back with. And I think it wouldn't have hurt if she gave it a try. But that's, you know, she had no idea what was going on at camp. And, you know, that's all hearsay.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And to be fair, I agree. Looking at that challenge, I probably wouldn't have done it just because it's the thing of, for me, yes, full on safety would have been lovely. Having basically immunity for the round would have been fabulous. But I look at that challenge and I don't even know where to start it. So I'd be sitting there trying to still figure it out. And then once I've actually figured out how you've got to do it, I'd only have like 5 seconds left. So that's why I think it was smart of Emily to not do it, because it's, why take the risk, like you said, if everyone else has failed and you're still not confident on how it's done. But I feel like for me, I would have kind of figured out in that sense. I'm coming back anyway, knowing that what I say, everyone's going to take with a pinch of salt and not really fully trust. So I could just sit there and go, I'm going to tell you the truth. You won't probably believe it because you'll have to take everything with a pinch of salt. That's fine. This is what happened. Here are the reasons why. And then the only way potentially people would figure out that it's the truth is if I stick to it and I don't deviate. But again, like you said, it's one of those things, no matter what, people weren't always going to trust her. So sorry, I was holding that in. Thank you.
It's cold season, so you know, hope everyone's feeling good, washing their hands, you know, staying healthy. That's our PSA for the moment. But you know, I like your approach. I still think people would say BS, you know, about the whole thing. And it didn't help that Emily did reveal that she played some mind games on Bruce, which ended up in the blind side being able to happen, which again, seeing the reactions of everyone after Bruce's blind side should be a note to say, oh, this is the biggest one of the season. Everyone is really energetic and excited about this. I might not want to put myself in the middle of the attention of something that caused this much excitement around camp after it happened.
Agreed.
I mean, this is where we also see Drew, right before Emily gets back to camp, we see Drew sort of taking some temperatures. He asks Katurah and Jake, you know, if you were to go to the end, who would be in that final 3? You know, like who would you like to take with you? And he says he's you're right, Ollie. He says he's ready to take a shot at Julie and Dee, but like they really are focusing on Julie being the one
Yeah.
to go next. And I like what Katurah says here too, because Katurah is like, all right, it's time. I'm going to take my game
Yes.
out of the shadows and play a bit bolder. And I think we've seen this from Katurah's gameplay. I feel like each episode we've seen a little bit more. And again, it started with that great social strategy that she established in those early episodes. All right. It really focused on Jake. Jake is a lawyer. Let me get him talking about being a lawyer. I'm going to keep it a secret to myself. We saw last episode, her and Emily talking about the plan to blindside Bruce. And Katurah was also, I would say, responsible for getting Julie's name sort of out there for being Mama J and what that looks like when you're sitting next to Julie at the final three. So I really like the subtleties of Katurah's gameplay, and I like that she acknowledges that she was playing subtly and now sort of starting to show her cards a little bit more.
Yeah, I think she kind of knows that she can't play a full-on subtle game. Because I feel like in the new era of US Survivor, and that's how I'm going to say that, in the new era of US Survivor, if you play a fully subtle game, I feel like people don't fully give it the respect it deserves. We saw in like kind of earlier seasons how playing such a subtle game can be an amazing style. But unfortunately, in this new era where we have so many twists, like this big thing of big moves, I think Katurah knows I can get to a certain point with a subtle game, but I need kind of these big statements at least. I just need a couple big statements on my resume to be like, here's these big things. Now, let me divulge all these subtle things. So I completely get it. Also, I really did actually appreciate, just speaking of Katurah, her and Jake practicing fire. That first scene where her and Jake, I was like, I love that. I was like, you're already thinking of Final Four.
Well, it's a good reminder. And like, again, maybe some foreshadowing, one of them or both of them will have to face off in the fire challenge. Like, I could see that happening, especially since we saw them practicing.
Well, I was going to say, considering last season with the editing, it was all of the fire in Carson's eyes reference. In season,
it's so good.
Season 44, it was always Carson, there was always a little glimmer of Carson with fire somewhere, and it was
also
always that,
Heidi made fire in the first episode. Heidi made fire, and then she said something in her confessional about like, "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet," and oh boy, did we not see anything yet until that amazing finale. Somehow Austin finds out about the plan to vote out Julie at tribal council, and he's telling Drew like this would really hurt Dee. So this is where we see some of Austin's hesitancy in the plan, and then him being unsure about including Dee in the plan, but like there's a relationship there. And he also, like, we get the reminder that not only did he give Julie what was originally his idol, but he gave her the more powerful version of the idol.
I literally, my note says, why did Austin give Julie his stronger idol? I just think to myself, if you have two and you're going to give one to someone, give them the weaker one. So that I was like, Austin, I think that's this kind of moment, idol aside, I do feel like we kind of saw the tiniest wobble in Austin's game, because we kind of saw his unsure, and kind of then it's like we saw that he wasn't. We've kind of started to see that not all of the I's are dotted and not all of the T's are crossed. He's just along the way he's accidentally not really done the finer little things, and I feel like we're now kind of seeing how that's affecting his game.
Yeah, we've seen players notice that about his game earlier in the season, right? When Jake was outlining his plan to blindside Julie the first time, it involved scaring Austin so bad that Austin would flip his vote if there was an option that they would have to go to rocks. So like people have identified this about Austin's gameplay and strategy. And I wonder how that might continue playing out in the future for Austin's game. I mean, we'll talk about if we think he's made a mistake here, or I shouldn't say here, but after the immunity challenge, we'll talk about if we think that he made a mistake by divulging the information to D or not. I think it could be looked at by a couple of different ways. But Emily arrives back at camp and tells the group, side note, before we move on too much, I do want to say, I think the idea that the amulet was good until final 6 and that the idol was good until final 5. I think it's a very subtle change that some of the advantages are good till this time. Some of the advantages are good to this time. I think there's more like mental obstacles that players have to go through to keep it all in order. And it adds something a little extra, like a moment like this.
Yeah. No, I do I love it when things are at a certain point, because I think it's always, don't quote me, I do think that a lot of the extra votes have only been until final 6 and then idols were final 5. I think. But I like that thing where it is only until a certain point. I think you're
right. Give or take a couple of special circumstances here or there. But Emily comes back, and like we said before, she tells the truth, didn't even try the challenge, and everyone's like, okay, you're next. Yeah, exactly. And it's unfortunate. But then we go to the immunity challenge. Now, before we talk about the immunity challenge, we are going to take a very quick 1-minute break, and we will see you after.
My name is Jonah Fielko, and I'm the CEO of Bracketology.tv, fantasy sports for reality television. We offer fantasy games for shows like The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and counting. You start by creating a community. Within your community, you can create a fantasy league for each show that you want to play fantasy games for. Within the league, you can choose up to 3 of our 4 game types, and our most popular is the Advanced League. Choose a team of contestants, and depending on what they do and say during the episode, that's how your team will gain or lose points each week. We also have elimination-style games like our Confidence Pool. This is where you choose how confident you are that each contestant will survive elimination that week. And we've also got March Madness-style brackets. Come back a couple hours after the episode to check your scores and watch you climb the leaderboard. Bracketology is free to play, so grab your friends, your family, your coworkers, and head to Bracketology.tv for more info.
All right, so we've all seen the immunity challenge by now. I mean, I'm sure if you're listening to this episode of our podcast, which by the way, we're on Spotify, but we're also filming live on YouTube. So make sure you come and join us next time, and you can participate in our live chat to let us know your thoughts and feelings about the episodes as well. Ollie, the thing I really want to touch on here is the final part of the immunity challenge. Jack and I were talking about it. It seemed to be a big conversation that came up.
Yes.
Do you like the twist that not only did the word have to spell out correctly on the side of the player, but also on the opposite side?
I liked that because it just added another thing, because we've seen, this is like the second one I've seen recently where it's kind of the word
right
around. And yeah, I like that it had to kind of match it, because it's just another element you've got to think in your head. Because again, we saw it in the challenge that having that really did screw people over.
Right. Austin, he had the word and he would have won if it was any other challenge, unless I didn't look at the word fully. He might not have spelled it. I think he did. Resourcefulness. Did he spell it correctly on the one side?
He spelled it right on the one side. On the back side, he didn't.
So I'm guessing it was one of those things where some of the double letters in the word had to be shuffled around.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I liked it too. And I thought from a television perspective, it gives more of a chance that someone isn't just going to run away with the challenge and there isn't any sort of suspense there. So that was good. Drew ends up winning immunity, and he also wins a barbecue reward back at camp. He invites Jake and Austin on the reward. Did we even see any footage of the reward?
A little bit, like the tiniest bit. And it was what we were all expecting of Drew trying to get Jake back on side. Yeah. It was basically Drew trying to schmooze Jake.
Trying to build that relationship back, especially because they had that a great conversation in the last episode that was so much fun. Yeah, it was probably a highlight conversation of the season. And we also my favorite part, and I forgot this happened this episode, but was all of the women back in the water just reading their buffs for entertainment purposes, like just because there was nothing else to talk about. They all figured out in their minds, okay, it's either going to be Julie or Emily. So everyone's just kind of like, there's nothing else. And then, of course, my favorite thing is when in doubt, throw Jake's name out. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's become the motto of these past few episodes.
My favorite part was when they were reading it and all I heard was, "Oh, made in Spain." I was like, wow. I was like, you are not hiding this at all.
Well, you don't have any reading material or entertainment on the beach, so you know what? You learn to appreciate the small things.
We so
I-
the fine details, they really appreciated that.
I would have been like, oh, this is a lovely pattern. Like really,
Yes.
really great color scheme.
It's a trademark from this place. I was like, wow.
It was funny. I mean, it's interesting that they didn't go more into strategy here. Again, they didn't really need to, as we saw how things played out. But all they did was the closest they got was just throwing Jake's name out again, which seems to
Yeah.
be the ongoing go-to for who are we going to vote for.
Yeah.
So
Jake's-
I mean,
sorry,
no, please. These were just
No,
fun
I was just
moments.
gonna say, Jake has kind of just become the red herring. He's kind of just become the throwaway. Like, if we need an easy person's name to say, just say Jake, because he's kind of become the red herring. That his name's always going to be there, but is it the right name? Probably not.
Do you think a player should embrace that role? Because we see a lot of this episode, Jake is like, I need to get out of being the backup vote, which is fair. But do you think there's also a strategy in terms of embracing that? Maybe at the end, I say, is when you
Yes.
really emphasize, like, I was always the backup and I still made it here.
Yeah, it completely helps you out if you get to final tribal council and you can pitch that. But it's whether or not there are times where you you made sure it happened and you can talk about it. If it is just the fact I was always in danger and I was never the vote, you kind of can't get credit for it. I feel like there's a difference between putting your name there and giving yourself, like, embracing that and using it to your advantage. Because say if Jake was like, hey guys, just use my name again. We've got this, just use my name and then we can do this. And then again. But if it's just been the case like it has of Jake is always the plan B, the safety plan B, he can't really use that.
Right. Unless you're arguing with the fact that at the end you stick to, I never wanted to be in this position, but I was, and I survived each time. But I see your point too of there's that you could use it as the strategy and say, you've all been targeting me. I know that there's an opportunity for a bigger move, so why don't you just use my name as bait?
Yeah.
Very dangerous to do, but we'll see. I don't know how I feel about that strategy, but I can understand where that is more so the embracing what your position is.
If Jake embraced it from an underdog perspective, fine, no worries at final tribal council. I think it's if he tried to bring any strategic element to it, that's where I feel like he'd get lost at this moment in time.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I do. And then we get my favorite conversation of the episode because it built so nice from the beginning. Like, this was great storytelling. That's my through line. This episode really did focus on the relationship between Austin and Dee. And this is where he tells her the vote is on Julie.
Yeah.
And it's not only does he just tell her that, but the setting, the scenery, it is thundering on the beach. This is just chef's kiss, like perfect moment to film.
But this is where do you remember I said at the start, this is where we kind of see that how this relationship is, Dee has kind of a one-up. Because when they were having this conversation, Dee kind of knows. Dee has a feeling, and Austin can't really hide what it is from Dee. I think the only reason Austin did tell Dee is because he couldn't take away his body language from Dee. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze again.
Bless you.
dying today. It's fine.
Oh, we
But
all have our moments.
know. I just happen to have them on camera. But that's what I mean. Like, Dee was kind of able to get it, like, clock his body language and be like, right, what's going on? Because you've changed. Something's changed here. What is it?
Yeah, but I also wonder, like, how obvious Austin was sort of being with it. I mean, yes, good on Dee for, I guess, having that wherewithal to sort of see that Austin wasn't behaving in a similar way that
Yeah.
she's used to him doing. But I think she actually showed it more so with how she handled telling
Yes.
Julie about the information
Mm.
and how she kept Julie. And there's a very interesting thing, and it has to do with Austin about how she told Julie and broke the news that we should talk about too. But I think a lot of people made, unfortunately, bad moves this episode.
Yes.
We can talk about what we think about Austin telling the information to Dee, but I think the way Dee balanced the line between telling Julie the information to get her to play the idol while also making sure that the vote, well, she couldn't say for sure what Julie was going to do, but by making it seem better for Julie to write down Emily's name instead of Austin's, I think Dee did a really great job
Yes.
at this. So Austin's move, do you think it was the right call?
No. I think because he knew he'd said it the entire episode, him and even Drew, who, let's be fair, Drew was the nicest way I can put this is Drew was the snake of this episode because he was the one that was campaigning for this to happen. They all knew that Dee wanted to protect Julie. Dee said it perfectly. Dee's position right now is she has Julie and she has Austin as her number ones. Why does she want to get rid of that? So either way, I think Austin telling Dee, it wasn't a good move because Dee was always going to tell Julie. But I think how Dee handled it, like you said, perfect, because she was able to balance it. She was able to do it so subtly. I think the only thing Dee didn't really do well is when kind of Julie was on her woman scorned moment, like, because obviously I watched it and I was like, Julie is a woman scorned. I was like, you've put her name out there, she's going for you, which I kind of loved because I was like, this is where Julie's like, everyone's on the hit list. And she went for Austin. She was like, no, I'll just vote off Austin. Get rid of the idol. Fabulous.
That was another favorite moment of the episode was when Julie was looking at Dee like, I could just vote out Austin. I could do it. I could write Austin's name with that smile on her face. I was so happy. It was so funny. And also just like the stakes were really high because here Julie learned that 2 out of the 4 Reba Alliance members was going to write her name down. So she was already being betrayed. So it wouldn't have surprised me if I didn't already see that Emily edit earlier in the episode, but it wouldn't have surprised me if Julie did decide to write Austin's name down. It was on the table. It was right there.
Yeah.
And the thing, so the way that Dee, do I have it in my notes? Because I want to make sure Dee never, when Dee told Julie, at least in the episode, and this is interesting and very subtle as well, she never said, okay, Austin, let me know that there's a plan to get you out. It was like, I think in a way, Dee kind of threw Austin, definitely Drew, and then also kind of Austin under the bus by saying, you're the target. They're voting you. Play your idol.
Yeah.
And I liked that. I liked that Dee, it didn't seem like Dee was trying to also protect Austin.
No. There was only one point she was. It was when she was like, Julie was like, let's just go for Austin.
But it was like after the fact. It was
it was after the fact. It was when Dee was like, no, he, like, instead of saying he's one of, like, he's my next closest ally, she was like, well, he's my number one. Like, Julie sat there and went, well, why am I not your number one? Like, why don't I just vote out him so then you only have me? And I kind of, that was the only part I was like, she could have just said she could have phrased it better. But overall, it kind of showed how good of a position Dee was in. And I think seeing that, because obviously we then see the conversation between Drew, like because I know Julie goes to Katurah and Jake and is like, no, Austin, do it. And then it gets back to Austin and Drew, and kind of Austin reveals to Drew that he told Dee. I feel like that should have been Drew's wake up call to be like, Dee is in such a good position, but it wasn't. But that's where I kind of saw it, because she's got her number ones in Austin and Julie. And I feel like Dee at this point, because of how snaky Drew can become, and I know that he's got an enemy in Jake. Jake will not trust him. Jake may work with him this round. Doesn't mean he's going to work for him moving forward. Dee has the ability now to turn on Drew. And I think that is where Drew should be worried, not Julie. Because Julie is just like, you've already annoyed your mum. Like you've turned your back on your mum there. And now you're going to have the mum and the sister coming after you, Drew. That's all I'm saying.
And I mean, we get a little sneak peek of like a little some drama happening in the next episode. Yes. We go to tribal council, and I like when Julie said it's getting easier to vote people out, and I'm giving myself permission to play the game. And like I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I just thought that was like, yeah, I like that. Like, you're there, give yourself permission to make the moves that you need to make. Yeah. And the clips that they chose, the sound bites from Julie here, I think they were just the right amount of misleading, because she talks about it's getting easier to vote people out. It's time to play the game. You're thinking, maybe she will take the shot at Austin. She says something about the line of like, I'm going to have to write someone's name down who I love just as much as the person next to me or the people next to me, Yep. And I'm like, oh my God, like, is she really going to vote Austin? So This is where I know that the episode, maybe I say it showed its cards with Emily's eventual elimination from the game. But I still was on the edge of my seat. I thought it was exciting.
I still think it did. I feel like the editors did do a really good job at kind of giving that, this may be what you think is happening. There's still this chance. And we're just going to give little sound bites to be like, just remember, this is still a thing. Because we've seen before that what we think is going to happen, there goes the left. I also want to give Katurah some credit, because I put in my notes, I'll try to remember the question now, where she talks about how something varies per person.
Well, Katurah talked about like removing emotion from game moves. Is that where you were going with this?
Yes. And I think Katurah's response to that was absolutely correct. It varies per person, because again, like for me, if I'm looking at everyone, me trying to vote out Katurah, I would have a lot of emotional investment to it. Whereas I see someone like Drew and I just like, nah, get rid of him. Someone like Bruce, nah, get rid of him. So I do think it does vary per person and how they feel in the situation. So I feel like what she was saying was like a really good point. And just to be shady, I feel like Drew didn't have, and this is not because I'm not a Drew fan, but I feel like this particular tribal, Drew didn't really have a good tribal. I feel like he just didn't have a good tribal.
I agree with that, because I thought he was going to. You remember when Jeff asked him a question and Drew gave a very short answer and there was that like pause? I thought it was a good idea actually for Drew to sort of take a back seat. And then when there was some more pressure put on him to continue the conversation, and he went into quote, like a long quote, and how it reflected in the game and how it related to the blind side of Bruce. You could see eye rolls from the jury.
Was that when Kelly was like that?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think so.
That moment, I've put this in my notes. During that part, I put, it's giving me Spencer from Cambodia. In a sense of kind of how he's now showing himself at tribal, and I think how people are connecting the dots. I feel like we're kind of, again, this is what I mean of the subtle little things we're seeing of the downfall of Drew. Because now the jury, I feel like he's been doing things, and kind of the jury are like, now we're over it now. And I feel like that's what we're seeing with Drew, unfortunately. Because it's not that he's a bad player at all. I mean, we've seen strategically he is really good, but I feel like it's that he like kind of similar to Spencer, he needs something to give himself like he needs strategic validation, and he needs to kind of have something that's his. And I feel like that's where he's starting to stumble. And I feel like that's what we kind of saw with Tribal.
He's the smartest player to ever play. He's the smartest person to ever play Survivor. It's funny with Drew. I think that's a fair comparison to make, because I think the strength of empathy in the game, I think people really underestimate. Yes, you need to make bold moves and you do need to betray people, but empathy is like really, really important to how people perceive you in the game and getting those votes at the end. And a lot of people have seen Drew have moments of a lack of empathy at certain times. And I think that it's sort of catching up to him in these final days here. And it's interesting. It's interesting. We've seen moments with Drew, mostly with Julie, I would say. Like, I know him and Julie had a moment. You did inform me of like what he was actually saying during it, but like he still took some time to have an emotional moment, regardless of what he was actually saying. He took some time to have a moment with Julie where it sort of seemed like they were both sharing in the thoughts and feelings of each other. We saw him get emotional when he wasn't chosen for the letters from home, right? So like, we've seen those things, but with Drew, it goes like very, at least from what we've seen, very 0 to 100 of I am strategically playing the game, or I am feeling my emotions about something. And he doesn't share in that.
Yes, and I think it's also the thing of with his empathy, I think, because we always know there's a balance between, for me anyway, there's personal empathy and game empathy. And I feel like he's very much leaned into, if he is empathetic, it's from a game standpoint, which then when you look at it, when you look at the kind of the thing, personal empathy is always going to be greater than game empathy. Like I said, the perfect example is that conversation with Julie last episode. Yes, there was that empathy and there was that emotion, but when you look back and you hear the context of what was going on, it's like, okay, but it's for this game reason. And it's like Julie was actually having a very personal, empathetic moment. So it's knowing what kind of it's being able to share in the empathy. And I feel like that's sometimes where Drew has stumbled, because where some people might be having like personal empathy a moment, he switches it into a game side, and it's like, no, just stay in that personal side, Drew. Just have a cry together.
I mean, I think that's a great, like, I think that's his reasoning for targeting Julie and not wanting to sit next to her at the end of the game. We all go up to vote. I mean, what did you think? We saw every single person's vote except for Julie. And I thought this was great, just to get my opinion out of the way here. I loved it because we all knew Julie was going to play the idol. And the question didn't become who voted for who. The question became, who did Julie vote for? So by showing that, all right, yes, we all knew what was going to happen. Julie was going to receive every single vote. I thought that was a very good choice to make in this situation.
I loved it. It was Dee's play the idol. Loved it.
It was Dee's play the idol and Katura's if this doesn't work, I'm blaming Austin.
That's what I was about to say. It was, but that I feel like why specifically mention that? So to me, it kind of that leads on to what are we going to like the aftermath, because clearly we know that Austin was the one to go and tell Dee, and clearly everyone now knows it was Austin that told Dee. So I feel like that was kind of giving a subtle cue of next episode, Austin's going to have some heat on him. And I feel like Katurah is going to capitalize on that. Even though she was the one that, you know, was being bold to get Julie's name out there, she wasn't the one that, the people that got the heat were Drew and Austin. Katurah was able to get her name out there and not take any heat. But yeah, it was all those little things. I was just, play the damn idol.
um, they it was really well done.
Yes.
Can we see, speaking of Katurah, we did see a sneak peek that Katurah and Jake are going to, it looks like, kind of really team up as the final remaining Bellows who are not a part of the Reba Alliance at all. I mean, do we think that they're going to be able to make something happen here and get the job done? Especially, like you said, we're starting to see those cracks really separate the Reba four.
This is, so you can't actually see this. This is
No.
my, hold on, if you can't read it, it says hot take. It's my hot take of the episode. And it's actually the person who I think has an amazing chance at, well, a good chance at winning is Katurah. I think right now we've all got, I feel like if anyone is the kind of winner right now, it's D. But if we have someone that I think has an amazing chance, all they need to do is get to final tribal council and kind of wow everyone, is Katurah. She was an underdog. She was like, during pre-merge, she was the underdog. She was the one that if Bello went to tribal, she was gone. If pre-merge Bello went to tribal, she was gone.
Yeah.
She then managed to change her position, get in with the Rebas to where when the Rebas were going for Bello, who was the one Bello they weren't going for? Katurah. She was able to use their cracks to her advantage. She then got into a spot where people weren't even targeting her. No one knows she's a lawyer. And she's been able to now put herself in such a middle position that now that the Reba 4 are cracking, all she has to do is capitalize on it. So I know half of what we say goes left, right, down and up, center, like all around. This one, I hope, is not a left fielder.
You practically wrote her final three speech. Yeah, I'm aligned with you, Ollie. Again, when we talked about Katurah in these past couple of episodes, and like things are really starting to heat up in terms of the strategy that she's already outlined, she's just let it sit until this point. And it is interesting. You're right. At times, if Bello was going to go to tribal, Katurah would have been in a lot of trouble at that time. So, bless you. So, I think that this is going to be interesting. And speaking of D, I'm so happy that I have D on my draft. I know I kept saying, and if Phil was here, I know we would talk about the story and the editing and how that was actually leading us towards Jake. And I'm starting to fall off that train a little bit. Do I get to have like 5 winner picks? That's the special thing about this season. I feel like, I know. I feel like with 44, there was only, but there was only 3 to 5 people that I could see winning the game. And all of those people did end up making it to Final 5. But then even when those episodes aired, it really felt like, oh, okay, only 3 of these people feel like they're getting the winner's edit and the wrap up of the story. I'm not saying not any one of them couldn't have won. It's just with the edit that we got, it made it feel like it was paying more attention to certain players than others.
Yes.
So this is the first time in a while where like I'm really scattered. And I'm really enjoying that about this season of Survivor.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like this season of Survivor, we really can't pinpoint who could be doing well because again, we saw kind of this rise of Emily, and we saw an amazing episode last week, to then this week her unfortunately being out. Rep my draft. Happy with the fact that I picked her though.
Oh, you're fully out though, right?
Yeah, I'm fully out. I don't care. I at least have people that I liked, so it's fine. I loved my 3. I always stand well, except for Brandon.
I like the people that I drafted too, and D is on mine. Julie's on mine, so doing pretty well so far. So that's good. But
I'm going to apologize to Abe though because he's got the one draft. He's got Drew and Austin. I'm like, we'll go for D and Julie.
I mean, Abraham won. I don't know how any of us can catch up. We're talking about our fantasy picks, our drafts on Survivor Now podcast at Instagram. We're on Instagram at Survivor Now
Yes.
Podcast. You can also find Ollie and I at our handles that are here. And Ollie, I think we should close out this episode. Emily was such a main character this season, and we talked about main characters really early on in the season airing. It felt like at that time, it already felt like that she had a lot of attention on her. And to see how her game, you said it best, like the metamorphosis of Emily's game from beginning to end, it's honestly, this might be my favorite storyline of the post 40 seasons.
Yeah.
It might actually be one of my favorite storylines of any season. I would have to really think about it, but it was so cool to watch her gameplay evolve, her social strategy evolve, and I hope that we see more stories like this in the future, because this one was just like, it was so well done. And again, Emily had to actually experience everything she did for us to even get these amazing episodes featuring her. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really cool thing that they were able to show us.
Yeah, I just love Emily. I think, again, like you said, we saw her grow as a person, grow as a player, and it was just beautiful to see. So hats off to Emily. Love her. I'd love to see her again. I'm trying so hard not to sneeze. Yeah, I would love. She just. I agree. In terms of the kind of this new era, her story arc and her player arc is one that's just a joy to see, because it was so organic, it was so natural, and it came from a good place. So hats off to Emily.
Couldn't have said it better myself. With that, we are going to end the episode here. As a reminder, Ollie, Randy, and I, we cover Survivor UK. And I know we've been enjoying the episodes that came out this weekend. We're going to talk about those on Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe and stick around for that if you like Survivor news, or if you're watching the season. Let us know how you're liking that one. We will be back here next week for another Got Something For Ya. And go ahead and leave us a comment. How many times did Ollie sneeze this episode? Let us know in the chat. Oh, you tallied?
I think it was 5.
You gave it away. Well, let us know in the chat what you thought about this episode. What storylines did you enjoy? Who is your winner pick? Who do you think will win, and who do you want to see win? And we will be back here to discuss next week. See y'all then.